Okay, so this is going to be the last installment of the series, so part 3. I don't believe I'm going to need a part 4, but if I do, I probably will not make a part 4 intro. But this is essentially the finished cabinet with the poles on there. You can see everything is inset. I don't think I filmed it, but after I put the last coat of paint on, I put polyacrylic on the outside. Because the paint was water-based, you can put an oil-based finish on top of water-based. You just have to wait a really long amount of time. So we opted to go with water-based for this. And I'm going to give the customer some leftover paint, so in case they have to do touch-ups over time, they have that option. But this is pretty much it. Like I said, unless they give me finished photos, this is essentially all you'll see of it. And at the end of the video, I'll kind of go through some last minute details I did with it. You can see that the drawers, now with the poles on, are all soft close. And these are also soft close. When you're installing these, you could set the hinges, at least these style hinges, to slam shut so that you don't have to wait for the soft close to go. Because you could see these inset hinges to soft close, they take a very long time to fully close. So if you're trying to fit your doors and you're opening and closing them and waiting for that, it's easy to just clip that little clip and get it to close. So I started with making the doors for this, and it was basically a matter of cutting that opening in half. You can kind of see my rough measurements. And then I've done enough of these that I usually cut these down to size as I go. I'm looking for about a little over a 1/16 inch reveal around the whole door. Now unfortunately, as I say, I cut these with the reveal included. I cut these too small. I doubled the measurements on all of them, so the reveal was a little too big. It was much closer to almost 1/8 of an inch, which is just too large for the opening. But I'll show you how I fix that later. This was just kind of pushing forward with the fact that they were still too small. Decided to mount the hinges anyway, so I have a jig. It's a little plastic jig that you can use. These cup hinges are pretty much all universal, at least the ones I have found. So this jig works for all of them. This is just the bit that came with the jig, so it will drill that hole. This is a Fastener bit. It will drill that hole for the cup part of the hinge to fit to the door. And I freehand them at this point. I used to drill them on a drill press, but you really don't need to if you have a steady hand. And I just kind of check the depth to make sure it sits flat. And once it does, those are good to go. So you also have the mark for the screw holes that come with the jig. So I could just use a little pilot bit there and screw these into place as well. And I did this on both doors. So I haven't veneered the edges of these because I'm going to have to add some stock to the edges, and what I added was just very thin strips of oak in order to build up the thickness again. So then I'm putting the part of the cabinet hinge that goes inside the cabinet in place. I'm shimming these up on a stack of cards, and this is how you can measure these and mount them. I just put the door in place to where I want it so it's flush with the front. I mark some holes with a pencil with it shimmed with that stack of cards, and then I just pre-drill those marks and then attach that the whole door. And these turned out perfectly. They were perfectly spaced and worked out nicely without having to do all of the math involved with calculating where to put these. It's not a ton of math, but it's just easy to hold them in place and make your marks. So these are very slowly self-closing doors. And you can see how big the reveal is. It's just too big. So this is them both mounted. I did the second door the exact same way. And I don't think I show it, but what I did is I ripped down 1/16 of an inch pieces of oak and just glued it to the edges and then re-trimmed the doors. So you can see it's the thickness of 2 pennies, whereas I kind of want more thickness of 1 penny. So this is already with the oak attached on the outside, and I'm just trimming it down, checking the fit. It's really important to do this if your opening isn't square, because you won't be able to cut square cuts on the doors and have it fit into place. You might even have to use a hand plane so that you get a beveled cut, and then that is more so what I'm looking for. And for this I used to use playing cards,
but I saw someone talk about them using pennies is almost a little over 1/16 of an inch, which gives you a nice reveal. So I use pennies for this, and I actually prefer that over the playing cards. So to mount all the faces, you could see I just rough cut the face on the radial arm saw, and then I'm going to veneer one edge of it. I'll cut the veneer so that I could put it in place and make sure it fits. So I'm going off camera, putting it in place, make sure it fits, and then veneering the other side. So these, unlike the doors, I measured and cut them mostly with the reveal calculated, so you're subtracting a little bit from your final measurement. And then I would cut them in place and veneer them, and these all worked out fine. So then once I had that, I veneered the top. Once I fit it widthwise, then I would veneer one side, so to account for the thickness of the veneer, I made a mark, and then I would trim it down to my mark. So these are pretty easy because all of my openings were pretty much perfectly square, so it made life a lot easier. You can see I'm using the pennies to shim it out. So this, since the inner insert is plywood, I don't really have to worry about that moving. The frame might move a little bit, but that's why I kind of got away with that 1/16 inch reveal. Some people prefer more of a 3/32 inch reveal, but for this I used the 1/16 because it's just plywood. And then once I had a nice fit, I finished veneering it. So I did that for all the doors. It was a matter of, at this point, the width is the same on all of them. So once I knew the width, I could just cut them all. And then I snuck up on the height. Shimmed out with the pennies from the inside. I countersunk 2 screws through the drawer box into the front. Then I could pop it out and securely attach it. And I could pop it back into place, make some little adjustments. And that is what that looks like. And then I could work my way up so that my hands could still reach through the top. And that's just what the top drawer looks like with the smaller box. And that is everything in place. So then for this, the customer provided the handles for me, which was nice. I didn't have to worry about buying them. So I just went through and marked center on all my pieces, and I just hand drilled through the box. Since it's 3/4 and 3/4, the front's pretty thick, so I had to use a 5/8 inch spade bit to kind of countersink from the other side, so enough of that screw stuck through the end to bite into the handle. But that is what the dry fit of the handles is going to look like. So to finish off the back, I spent probably a little more time on this than I needed to, but because I made the front and the back similar, I didn't just want to put a slab of plywood over the back. So I went through all the compartments and I used a rabbiting bit to make a rabbet on all 4 corners, and then I don't show it in the video, but I squared up the corners so that they weren't rounded over. And this was just a process of going through each one. And I'm using Luan on the back, so it's less than 1/8 of an inch thick, and then I just cut squares of Luan and fit it into place. Once that was all cut, I just put some brads in there to hold everything in place. It finishes off the back nicely. So the finish for this is a paint, but it's watered down with polyacrylic, so that it's actually a little see-through. It's not completely solid. So this is kind of mixing up that mixture, and it also made the paint a little darker. I don't know the science behind that, and that was what the customer wanted, more of an indigo color than a navy color. So it was just a little deeper, a little richer, and you could see by wiping it on and letting it dry, you could still see the grain and a little bit of the wood, so it was kind of a nice look. So I started with the back so I could get the application process perfect, because it goes on not like a paint. I put it on pretty thin and really rubbed it into the wood so it wasn't a solid surface. And I took all the hardware out to do that because it's just easier to paint the inside without the hardware. So I had to reattach everything. That's reattaching the inside hardware, the drawer box hardware. Now I did make minor adjustments on all these drawer boxes, so I had to go back and readjust those because when I took all the hardware out, I didn't label them. So if you make major adjustments on your hardware, as you're taking everything out, make sure to label them so that when you put them back in, you're putting them back in the right cubbies and you won't have to worry about readjusting all the doors. But this is pretty much a process of putting them all back into place, testing them to make sure they fit in there nicely, and then adding the doors. I did clear coat this with 2 coats of the polyacrylic, but I didn't film it.
So like I said, this is the finished cabinet. The main thing I don't think I filmed, which I'm going to show you now, is there's a little stop here and a little stop up here, and I put a little tiny felt pad on the front so that when these close, as they close extremely slowly, they hit that little pad, but they're still perfectly flush with the front frame of the cabinet. Another thing I liked about painting these is not only will they be pretty durable, and I just don't enjoy clear coating the inside of cabinets. The dovetails on the plywood that I use look a lot nicer in paint as well. And then on the inside, it's open for plumbing, and you can see how I have the spots marked off for the sink, and the cabinets inset, the cabinet drawers on this side inset enough so that that entire sink will fit.